Welcome back to Preparing for the Unexpected. Today we're talking with Marcus Vaughan from Iluminr. Marcus, great first and second segment there, talking about capability development and micro simulations. And as I said at the end of the last segment, we're going to talk about one of your favorite things, operational resilience. How do you view operational resilience?
Isn't that the big question? I
Start off with a zinger.
Oh my Lord. So I get less hung up on specific definitions, as we've probably spoken about many a times. If I like try and boil this down to like what are we actually trying to achieve? Really, it's an organization's ability to serve its customers. I keep it pretty simple, like that. Now, obviously, there's a lot that needs to go into that, and every regulator, and I'll almost say every, company around the world and resilience professional has probably their own lens and their own unique, nuanced take on that. And I certainly don't want to take away from that. I think the critical pieces in that when we talk with organizations, how are they viewing it? And I've seen a lot of presentations from a lot of my customers now in terms of how they define certain things that, fit into operational resilience. But I leave it pretty simple. It's how can an organization continue to serve its customers, in particular, obviously, the critical operations that provide those services to those customers. And obviously, I'm in the resilience world. A lot of that we obviously have to put some pressure testing to on the day that not everything's working as BAU. So obviously under duress, stress, or use industry lingo, a severe but plausible scenario, really to test, are we able to, as a company, still deliver our services to our customers?
Is there what am I trying to say here? Misconceptions about operational resilience or things that it's really not?
Again, that depends on who you ask on any given day. I think
Yeah.
I've heard a lot. I've heard a lot from a lot of people about this, as in nearly every single conversation I have with a resilience practitioner, they will have a different take, and there's many different takes on that. So I've heard everything from, it's business continuity on steroids to it's not. I've heard if you think about misconceptions, I've heard a lot of people say, "Well, we've got to throw out all of our business continuity planning and start again." And I've heard a lot of people say, "Well, that's just not the case." It really depends on who you're talking to and what part of the world that you're operating. I think, and again, I'll boil that down into the world that I spend most of my time in now is obviously, exercising capability development and micro simulations that go along with that. I hear a lot of misconceptions around trying to meet operational resilience requirements in certain ways as well, and what can and can't work to do that. Now, I think the reality is different regulators have a different level of rigidity when it comes to what you need to show us to get things done. So you do get different lenses on that front, and I think that shapes a lot of practitioners, I guess, view on the landscape because they are being like pushed in a particular direction by the regulator to show a form of evidence on that. But yeah, I hear a lot of misconceptions or different viewpoints is probably the best way to put it, as opposed to misconceptions on that.
I tend to see a lot of organizations, and I've been at a few, who look at it as because of these regulations, and yeah, we have this, we have that, yeah, we address this, that it becomes, as you Australians say, tick and flick
Yeah.
exercise. But that's not, to me, that's not what resilience is. It's not a one and done or a destination to get to, and then that's it.
Yeah.
It's more than that.
It is absolutely more than that. That's an important element to get done as well. Like, yes, we need to be able to evidence what we're doing, but that is the cart. It's not the horse.
Mm.
Actually showing that as an organization, we are facing something, that's not BAU, that is severe but plausible, highly disruptive, however you want to name that, that we can essentially work around that situation and maintain that level of, I guess, service continuity to our customers. And in particular, What typically boils to the top of that prioritization wise is vulnerable customers as well. So it is certainly not just compliance. Oh my Lord, it's certainly not. It can get, and that is probably the great challenge of the way that we get it done, because there is a lot to get done, especially with major, multinational organizations. There is a lot to get done. I think people quite often get stuck of just trying to keep their head above water with what's being asked of them. And again, that comes down to a resource investment perspective. And so the lowest common denominator is always, well, we just need to meet the compliance requirements because that's all I've got the resource to do. But you are missing them. If that is the case, that the way to get around that is just think a little bit differently. It's not to apply what we used to do to the current scenario and current environment, and think differently around the options that you have available these days to essentially ignite engagement, really test resilience, really get teams thinking about these things and actually getting those light bulb moments happening, capturing the data off the back of it. Of course, like we're going to need that. We are going to have to front up to the regulator. That's going to happen. You can't get around it. And you need to think about that before you set off on the journey. So again, when I think about it from a simulation perspective, whenever we develop a micro simulation, a lot of them are used in our financial service customers, we do have to think about what do we have to evidence, because that's going to set the objectives, and the objectives are going to set the tasks we want that team to complete. But that doesn't mean it has to be some boring, like, workshop or discussion that is just like a stack of words on a PowerPoint. Like, you can infuse like really thought-provoking scenarios to get those moments happening and really show that. And yeah, there's some bounds, right? Severe but plausible is a critical piece, obviously, within operators. So you have to show that, not a great terminology, but the blast radius is significant. Like, it's going to cause a severe, obviously, disruption to the organization, right up to systemic style disruptions. But there are ways to do that to get those moments happening, and just making sure it's all being recorded because you've put the thought into the forefront of it. And then thinking about efficiency and exercise strategy is a really important piece, because again, if you don't think like about efficiency in exercise strategy and how do you make the most efficient exercise strategy, you do end up in that resource crunch. And then, obviously that will ultimately take away from how much thought gets put into engagement and actually building up resilience, as opposed to purely just meeting compliance.
I think some organizations forget about change. Resilience, as you said it, resilience is a path. Well, along a path, there's changes, organizational change, people change, systems change, processes change, new processes get introduced, old ones, new teams get developed, teams get split up. So all of that is going to have an impact on the plans and processes you're developing under the operational resilience banner. And I think a lot of organizations don't take change into account.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And I think we've come out of I guess, a history where, if you think back through the BCM life cycle, it's often completed on it's like a process would typically be completed on an annual basis. We're done.
Hmm.
Next year's the next program. And I think, just given the rapid pace of change that we're facing, like that, year-long cycle, and we're done, ticks, done, move on. I think we probably need to give way to just a continuous ongoing process of, improvement, learning, resilience, right? Because to your
Yeah.
point, the environment is just constantly changing. Our resource structure is constantly changing. The org structure is constantly changing. The technologies we're leveraging is constantly changing. Like, at the moment, I'm developing a severe but plausible scenario that includes agentic AI, because that's where organizations, they're considering, what does this look like now that we're embedding, starting at the very early stage of embedding artificial intelligence into our core operating functions and processes and services. Well, that means that we need to think about, what does that mean from let's say an organization is reducing headcount because the agentic AI does a certain amount of jobs. We need to start thinking about that from a resiliency perspective as well. And what happens if that needs to pull out? We need to fill that gap. What does that look like? Like, again, so it is just constantly moving feast, and we need to, I guess, take our resilience programs to a state of constantly developing and identifying, I guess, those changes, and the threats and the opportunities that come with those changes, and ensuring that at the end of the day, should something happen to one of those changes, that again we can still service our customers.
We've mentioned the path and constant change. Where do you see the resilience industry in general going, or where would you like to see it go? Or where is
Yeah,
it
that,
going that you don't like where it's going?
well, that's yeah, that's there's a few questions boiled into that. I so things that we're being, I guess, gravitationally pulled and experiencing is probably where I'll start. So my observation on what I'm just experiencing and working with resilience teams, the I guess the proximity to technology is just like you just can't get away from it anymore. And so we're seeing obviously a massive convergence in terms of resilience teams quite often fitting under the CSO, the CISO, sometimes those fitting under one or the other. And so we're seeing that culmination and the integration of those teams into, again, the crossing across cyber. Technology resilience obviously being absolutely critical as a part of that. So I think what we're seeing is a shift where it is becoming again very technologically driven and focused. And certainly a lot of the regulations are driving that as well, because the ecosystem, and we've experienced so many global outages of major tech firms now that we realize like it's still on us to maintain, service continuity and operational resilience, regardless of who goes out. So we're certainly feeling that pull and watching that happen. So we are seeing a lot of I guess, the shifts in teams under org structures to get that job done and maintain that service, I guess, that operational resilience, so to speak. I think there is a somewhat of a guard change with that as well. I think those resistant to change are experiencing a pretty challenging circumstance around that. So practitioners who are leveraging and harnessing, I guess, new ways of thinking and new technologies coming out along with that, just thinking differently with that, they're thriving. And ones that aren't, well, like experiencing some pretty challenging situations from a job security perspective and where they sit within the organization. I think artificial intelligence is absolutely changing the game in many ways. I think we have to everyone should sit down and go, how can I use artificial intelligence to support me and do some of that stuff that might have been more laborious or, heavy-handed to deal with? Where can I use it and leverage it to harness insight about our organization and engage people?
Mhm.
Because there's still like the beauty about like resilience practitioners, like few things going for us. We're people. That's good. People like people. So engagement is always a big piece, and having high impact conversations is a highly valuable thing. Being able to story tell impacts and investment, really, really important piece. And being able to obviously see forward. And I think that's, and again, we always use simulations to do this, but like, running a simulation about a particular scenario that, may not have even happened on Earth yet, or at least we're starting to see that, but extrapolating what we're seeing now a little bit into the future based around what the company is doing, having that foresight and then exercising that to get people to start thinking about risk and risk management, about where
Mm.
the organization's heading. So I think there's a huge opportunity for resilience practitioners to move in that path. Absolutely.
I like the people focus because a lot of times I've told people when you take into account emergency management, disaster planning, business continuity, all those different pieces, I said it's not for me. It's for you. It's to
Yeah.
protect your
So,
people, your processes, your brand, your job, your livelihoods, your family, your colleagues. I said, so it's not for me, it's for you. And when they start realizing that, sometimes you get quite the shift.
yeah, yeah, absolutely you do. And yeah, their ability, I mean, that is the thing, right? Like we're all people here, those watching, like, and people get the most engagement out of people. And so you really have an opportunity to connect with people and bring to life the story of resilience of that organization so they can help people. Like that is the thing. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of strength in that.
Well, we're down to 2 minutes left. I missed my 3 minute mark. 2 minutes left. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share on any of the topics we've covered today?
I think I guess the things I'd be thinking about for any resilience practitioner is start thinking about, like I said, harnessing new ways of working. I think that's probably one of the greatest challenges I've seen for people is trying to tackle new problems with old solutions. So trying to step outside of the box is a really important, I think, task for every resilience practitioner. Look at how you can leverage technologies for resilience, absolutely new technologies that are emerging as well. But also think about how that's going to affect the organization. Because thinking forward around, hey, if this gets implemented or embedded or rolled out, how can that cause, obviously an operational resilience or a continuity challenge for organization? And how do we create that insight for people before it happens? I think is always the critical element there. But outside of that, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, Alex.
Good.
Always open to have a conversation with yourself, of course, and of course anyone else that wants to talk about resilience, operational resilience, the future of resilience. That's literally what we do, and of course, capability development and exercising. That's our wheelhouse. I love it.
Yeah, and just because we're filming, how you cornered me in one of your presentations, I forget which one it was. No one would put up their hand, so you made me
Yes.
answer.
As, if I see you in a crowd, Alex, you know I'm going for you. You always have good insight. That's why I love doing that.
It was
You'll
fun.
always get conversations started.
I just had to point that out. Marcus,
It's
it's
your turn
great
this
to
time.
chat with you. I know it took us a long time for this to happen, but I really appreciate you sharing your time and all your thoughts today. Thank you so
No,
much.
likewise, Alex. No, thank you. I really appreciate the time and always good to connect.
Great. I will see you in London in a couple of months.
Indeed. Looking forward to it.
Thanks again, and everyone watching and listening, stay prepared, everybody.